And welcome back to another edition of the Big Nick Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Yoke, the bald kid wonder. We got Megamind, the Zen master himself, Angelo, the man sitting up, recovering from back surgery, the man that makes it all happen, Pellegrino, and Vin, the man behind the scenes typing us crazy messages the whole time. Angelo, today we're talking about Phil Jackson. He was on the Curious Leader podcast, which is hosted by Kobe Carl, the son of famous NBA former coach George Carl, famous mostly for the Nuggets coaching, and a former Laker player under Phil. How did you like to listen overall, Angelo?
I enjoyed the listen just because Phil hasn't spoke since he left the Knicks. Actually, he hasn't spoke, and I remember the tweet he tweeted out. Everybody was kind of searching for answers the second he got fired by Jim Dolan, and I remember his first tweet after was him with his feet up in Montana on a beautiful sunny day with his legs up. So I just like to hear from him. So facts. So it was nice to hear him talk, but I'm just not interested in the way he talks nowadays, just because his methodical Zen master 1980s approach to life, I feel like is so outdated. But I enjoy watching him because nobody in the world besides him and probably a handful of other people speak like that. So it was good. There was some good stuff in there.
When you say 1980s methodical approach, you don't like his the way he speaks or his message overall. Can you dive a little bit deeper into that opinion?
He says a lot of big words, and I was very bad in school. So anytime he speaks, probably every sentence I pause and I go to urbandictionary.com.
I think the first problem is that you go to Urban Dictionary
Right, right,
instead of
right, 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 right.
Merriam-Webster Dictionary. You're going to the wrong one. You're looking up words and then you actually get like you type the word posse after he says it and you're like, oh, I get it. Damn, that's
Ah!
some racist. Yeah.
Listen, Joe, I've been out of school 11 years. I mean, you've probably been out of school longer than me, but
I
my
got my
family
bachelor's
business.
5 years ago.
Listen, my Italian Guinea family, they taught me a lot of bad words, so and how to speak to people in a not so good way. So that's the kind of language I picked up. So to listen to Phil, it's like listening to Jesus, basically. I don't want to listen
Dan's,
to
Dan's,
Jesus.
turn your volume down a little on your mic, bro.
I hear that. That makes a lot of sense actually. Long Island where it's at. Where you learn how to make a great deli sandwich and you don't learn how to speak to people properly, that's for sure.
Yep.
Just so everyone knows, I don't have to dive into Phil Jackson's accomplishments or his overall viewpoint on life. For the Knicks standpoint, he became the VP of operations in 2014 and the team president. Um, the two things, so in the quote, the first quote he says is there's two things that go into it. One, you got a media that was decidedly against the organization, as in the New York media, and they were looking for whatever things they could do to throw spurs in the organization. And it stemmed because of some misunderstandings. And I was like, okay, I think we can overcome some of these things. Like the Larry Brown incident, they signed a bunch of loaded contracts, limited what they could do. After Larry Brown was fired, it left Isaiah Thomas to coach the team as the president of organization. Then they had the lawsuit with Isaiah, which cost the team tens of millions of dollars. Ownership was complicit with this. They
Joe,
listened
but what
to
is that? Why did
sports
he
writers
even?
and hiring Larry Brown.
What was the point of him bringing up any of that? That had literally nothing to do with him. I understand the bag. I guess he's just talking about the baggage in general that came with being the Knicks president or whatever his exact role was. But I didn't even think he needed to dive in on that. I
I
didn't.
think part of it is because he did have a lot of tribulations as the Knicks president, and it just like a lot of things happened to him at once. They did fire Larry Brown. They had already overpaid for contracts, like Joakim Noah, for example. Um, and then when Isaiah Thomas went from being the president and the coach, and then he had the sexual harassment lawsuits with that girl that used to work for MSG. The next thing is that he's like, I realized we were faced with financial limitations. So they had already oversigned, they already had overbooked loaded contracts for players that weren't actually producing for them, which hinders you greatly in a salary cap era, obviously. His coach was going through a sexual harassment lawsuit. And then the next guy he hires is Derek Fisher, who then literally has the Matt Barnes incident where he's like sleeping with Matt Barnes' ex-wife, Gloria Gomez, or whatever the hell her name is. And then this dude is flying out like the weeks of training camp to LA from New York for a team that sat out for 5 months and wasn't good. Like before even this year, we weren't above 500 since like before Phil Jackson. His first year, his best year was like 32 and 50 or some crap. Like He just was handled a bad. He was handed a bad situation. Kristaps Porzingis was like the best thing that he even had during his whole tenure, and it's just I don't know. I honestly like this whole thing is just it's just stupid to me. Like I enjoyed what he said overall. The interview is an
So
hour
is
and
that based on
change
his
long.
opinion that Kristaps was his best? Because I think Carmelo Anthony might have actually been his best player in that tenure with the Knicks.
I think that he actually like he got on his own. Carmelo was there
Oh, okay. Yeah,
before
his
he got
acquisition, his
there.
best
I
acquisition.
mean,
Understood.
can we talk
Right.
about for a half a second how his first actual dollar spending as a president of the Knicks was, I believe, signing Lamar Odom to a free agent, which probably worked out for like 30 days, I believe.
30 days. I mean, was that the 30 days he was out of rehab? Is that why it worked out?
I don't know. They were trying to get him back in shape, and that didn't work out. But he did bring on his former Laker Vucevic.
Oh, Sasha Boyachek.
Yep.
I wish it was Nikola Vucevic. Would be way better. We almost could have had him yesterday.
We used to,
Not
me
really.
and Joey used to love Sasha.
So did I until he started bricking every shot at the Garden.
Yeah, and then well, I mean, at least Steve Novak made most of the threes he took. To go back to so the main thing of this from a Knicks standpoint is what he said about Carmelo Anthony. What he said was we made a 5-year contract with Carmelo, and Carmelo as a leader, I think wanted to be a leader, but I didn't think he completely knew how to be a leader as a player. And I think that the strength of his personality was intimidating some of the coaches that were asked to coach the team. So there wasn't this compliance that has to go between players and coaches. Angelo, what's your take on that?
I'm trying to figure out what he exactly means. Like, I wish he would have dove further into that kind of Mellow context. I mean, I think we all know as watching Mello all through these years, I don't think he was like a vocal leader. He was more of, and I believe Mello has said this many times before, that he was more of those kinds of guys that just, he likes to show his leadership by his play on the court. He's not one of those rah-rah guys that'll be in your face in a locker room or in a timeout screaming, you should have done this, you should have fucking done that. Nah, he always tried to move the needle by his play on the court. I mean, not everybody's going to be Michael Jordan and Kobe, which he says also in this episode with Kobe Carl.
Yeah.
But, you know, we didn't need him to be Michael Jordan or Kobe. We just need him to be Carmelo Anthony. So Phil Jackson talks about, like, you know, Melo being who he is and not being those kinds of players, but then why not try and put the proper team around him? You know,
Before you go too far into that, I was going to ask you, what do you think about, because to hear that Carmelo Anthony might be intimidating to coaches, I feel like would be bad overall as the leader of your team.
But what does that even mean, Joe? What does that even mean? Like,
so you know how I'm sure Melo doesn't have as much power, or at his peak, he definitely doesn't have it now. At his peak, he didn't have the same type of like pull as like LeBron James per se. That we all say that LeBron James could get a coach fired today. Like if
Right.
Frank Vogel won the title last year, and then LeBron James goes to the buses and is like, "Hey, I actually don't like Frank Vogel anymore. We should get him out of here." Within a week, Frank Vogel's gone. I feel like Carmelo, and this is all just based on like watching the games and the team for years. I don't really know Carmelo Anthony, obviously. I feel like his overall personality and just him and Lala, like the whole New York media spotlight, all that stuff, like he being the pull and the player that he is could in fact be intimidating to a coach that like Melo is a chucker at the end of the day. Like we all love Carmelo Anthony because he's one of the best ISO players of all time. We've like ISO players don't win the title unless you're as good as Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, which is few and far between. An ISO player is not going to win the title, but the ISO player being your best player makes it way harder for a coach to like take him out of the game or like give him a stern talking to or anything like that. So therefore, I think that what Jackson was saying when he was saying he's intimidating to coaches was that coaches couldn't actually tell Melo he was doing right or wrong within a season or within games. And then his last year, he was 32-50 on the Knicks. Like that's like your best player. If you're the team's best player and you go 32-50, that is solely on you.
yeah, but
You're
Joe,
taking most of that blame.
But Joe, is there any bite back in terms of, you know, these players didn't want to play in the triangle, and you know, they spoke about it. I mean, they just didn't feel like that offense fit into the style of play that was being played in the NBA. So as much as, you know, you want Melo to will the team to victory just solely himself, I mean, does a lot of it have to do with the style of play that was outdated? I mean, the triangle's still being played in today, but it's just like smaller variations of it. But we were solely trying to run the triangle offense.
They
And
were
I'm
trying
so
to run the
sick.
triangle like 3/4 of games, which is way
I'm
too much.
actually, but you know, we were so stuck on that word triangle, and I was so getting by the time like Phil Jackson was gone and Derek Fisher was gone and Hornacek was gone, I was so sick of that word triangle because it's just a fucking word. It's just the offensive self. It's just an offense. It's just you know, a free flowing offense. They put too much stock into to that one word triangle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that entirely. Just I got sick of hearing the word triangle and triangle offense as a phrase for like
Yeah.
5 years,
Yeah.
and it's like you read 11 Rings and then everything about Phil Jackson with Jordan and Kobe and stuff. It's like the triangle in its essence is not like the way you score the most points in basketball. Like spacing the floor and running gun is how you score the most points in basketball, but then you end up giving up more defensive possessions because you're running and gutting and shooting threes most of the time.
Correct.
Guys, a lot of people who I know a lot of people who followed the Knicks I know they didn't read, at least the people I know didn't read into Phil Jackson's books and his philosophy as far as basketball goes. As far as a triangle having like a name, I think Phil was big on that because he was into that tribal mentality. Like we think like a
Yeah.
tribe, we are a tribe. So I think like just having name and like sacred connections between words and stuff
Yeah.
probably meant something to Phil, and
Well,
that's
that
why it
had a
was
lot to
emphasized.
do. That
The
had a lot to do
1980s
with
Zen Master methodology.
that had to do a lot with Tex Winter, R.I.P. Tex Winter.
Yeah.
That was like his confident. So you know that comes from his approach. But the whole terminology, bro, it's just a fucking offense. It's just called the triangle. I wish they would have named it something else, like a square would have been better. But I know the whole point of the triangle is fucking because three guys, one guy's in the corner, one guy's in a post, and one guy's on the wing. So that's what forms a triangle. But I'm sick of that fucking word, man.
Yeah. Also, the idea of cutting your offense in half and then you watch today's NBA where it's like drive and kick. Imagine if they were actually like point guards were told to only run the triangle for the most part. It's like, hey, I know the guy on the other corner three is basically wide open because of the way the offense works, but you're supposed to hit the guy in the wing that's going to be double covered because of the poor spacing. It
Joe,
just doesn't make any
one
sense.
of my favorite parts of that interview, and I don't know if I'm getting a little ahead of you, maybe you have a timeline here, but when Phil Jackson said, I felt how, what was the exact quote here? I'm gonna find it before
What was it about in
I
regards to
hold on.
what?
I got it. I got it right here. He goes, I kind of understand Trump had to live with probably for his first 3.5 years in office with the media. Here's my
Oh,
thing.
in the short term in the C with the Knicks. Yeah.
Like the media is the same now as it was when Phil Jackson was a president. Why is he putting so much emphasis on the media basically ruining the Knicks? It's just the media. I mean, listen, we all read the paper. It probably sucks to get your name written in an article all the time, but don't fucking tell me that was part of the reason why he left the Knicks or got fired from the Knicks. Come on, man.
Did you see the quote though where he said Dolan basically when Dolan fired him, it was almost like a relief. So he goes, he's sitting next to David Stern, and David said, "Don't let the media run you out of town." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I forgot. I wrote Joel Axelrod. I don't know what the guy's name was here, and the medium ran him out of town when they started being critical of him." And Jackson responded, "The media isn't going to run me out of town." But I think Jim felt like, as in James Dolan, felt like I was facing too big of an uphill climb, and relieved me of the job because he just saw the media was going to be backing Carmelo in the situation. I was going to be the guy that was taking the lumps. At the end of the day, basically, I think this does goes to the point that Melo was at his peak, like pretty powerful in regards to the team and media standpoint. That if it was a him or me thing, Melo won that battle. Also, I do take Jackson's word for it in the sense that to say the media kind of does like go against the Knicks, like LOL Knicks isn't like only a nationwide thing. Up until this year, it's also been a New York thing. Like people that don't like basketball in New York laugh at you for being a Knicks fan. The same way people that are like Giants fans or don't like football laugh at Jets fans or like Yankee fans and non-baseball like lovers laugh at Mets fans. Like it's just part of the status quo here. So based on that, and also the fact that he was in New York for 5 years and then LA for 9, 10, however long he was there, and LA is the second largest media market, and he said that about New York and not LA. Maybe there's something to be said about our media being like a little too harsh on these people that are human beings.
I could say like Melo probably took most of the lumps towards the end of that whole Knicks Phil dynamic with Melo. I mean, he was getting bashed by Phil. I mean, Phil was making like these weird tweets, which he also spoke about in that article. You can't change the spots on a leopard. And Melo would like played it so. One of my favorite things about Melo was how cool he played it towards the end of his Knicks tenure. Like that whole year and a half or two that Phil was there. I mean, he took, first of all, the team was fucking god awful. I mean, they tried to make moves. I mean, not the last year or so. I mean, they tried to pick Derrick Rose. They drafted Porzingis. Yeah, that didn't work out. But I mean, Melo got fucking bashed towards the end of his Knicks tenure, and he just kept it cool. He didn't say nothing outlandish towards the media. And I'm pretty sure, like, I've read multiple these beat reporters. They said like Melo was a stand up dude. Like he never like spoke out of context. Like he always was straight up. So he actually outlasted Phil. So all that shit Phil was talking, he kept his cool. He didn't ask for, I don't know if he asked for a trade during that thing, but he made it through and just I don't know.
Well, part of the thing was that Phil wanted Melo to waive his no trade clause, and he was trying to tell Melo that he had worn his time out in New York, and that's when that came out and the snow the spots on the leopard quote came out. That was around shortly thereafter was followed by Dolan letting go of Phil.
Phil negotiated that no trade clause with Melo. So in the same sense, he wanted him to waive it. He is part of the reason why he has it. I mean, they were going to be compliant with each other anyway, right?
If you're if you're a president or like a GM of a team, you never want a player to have a no trade clause. That makes it
Payton
so
has
much,
a no trade clause, by the way.
Right. That's always negotiated by the agent. Like no team would want that. They always want to be in control. Agents want their players to be in control and for the agents to be in control. That's why that even exists at all in sports. There's no shot Phil Jackson wanted Melo or any player to have a no trade clause just in order for them to keep him satisfied as the superstar of the team. They had to do that. If you were in any sport GM, would you want no trade clauses on your team? You'd want to be able to get rid of your players at will if they start falling down off a cliff performance wise, or even just getting bad a little bit.
I mean, I'm not in that position. I mean, probably not. Just from, like you said, you want to get rid of players. Money has a lot to do with it. You want to dump them as soon as you can, clear cap space, or get another better player. But like, there's
nice. That's a good clip right there.
Excuse me, I apologize. There is some players that were deserving of it. Kobe Bryant, KG, I believe, had it, but that's a little off topic. But I mean, Melo's not in New York. We're way past that. 2021 Randall over 2013 Melo. Just saying, though.
I'll take Julius Randle over Carmelo Anthony now. I don't think at his peak I would say that yet.
Joe, just for 1 year, though. We can't, over the body of work, though. 2021 Randall.
If Julius Randle can get us to the Eastern Conference Finals, I will sign off on that. Carmelo Anthony has gotten us to the farthest round we've gotten to since 1999 or whatever lockout shortened season it was. I think it was 99 with Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston, all those Marcus Camby, Kurt Thomas, all those guys.
That fucking stat.
The second round was the farthest we've gotten to since 99.
That stat, Julius Randle's the first Knick to have 2 triple doubles since Mark Jackson. I forgot what year it was. It's fucking crazy because Melo was more than capable of catching triple doubles. I don't know if it was Melo himself that didn't want to get it or just, the style of play he needed to play with the Knicks. But Melo was more than capable. And I'm pretty sure the coaches that coached him on the Knicks said he was more than capable of being around a triple double guy.
I really wish that Carmelo Anthony focused more on getting assists and like passing throughout his career.
Yeah.
I honestly think Melo's ego and his love of points and the spotlight being on him is what prevented him from ever getting to like a LeBron James-esque level. They have the same size build. They could have been the same dude. LeBron's more athletic. and sees the floor better. But it's like Melo didn't even try to see the floor most of his career. He wants to get the ball at the elbow and he wants to shoot.
Yeah. Going back to the Phil Jackson thing, I'm just reading this. It felt like a major disappointment to have to go through and not be able to turn that thing around because it's the heartbeat of New York. I remember when Phil Jackson signed, and obviously probably any Knicks fan in the world was super duper hype, doing jumping jacks like crazy, as I was one of those guys. I really feel like he wanted to, like, he really felt like he had this obligation to turn that team around just because of the roots. Did he win a championship with the Knicks, Joe?
No.
He wasn't part of that team.
Oh, 73. Yeah.
Yes.
As a player.
So,
Yes.
when he says, like, if he felt like a major disappointment in one way, I feel like he really meant that. Like, he really wanted to turn this thing around. Obviously, it was a really big uphill climb. But in another sense, maybe he's like, okay, I'm 87 years old, which is not his actual age. This is the one opportunity I could grab a humongous fucking bag from Jim Dolan. Let me fucking do that. Am I crazy to think that, Joe? I mean, listen, I know Phil Jackson is a winner his whole life, championships, this, that, but money plays a factor in everything, no?
Think of how good that deal was. He didn't have to like go to half the games. He didn't have to go anywhere.
Bro,
really.
What
It
the
was
fuck?
I mean, I guess in essence, like if you're a president of a team or anything like that, you don't have to really go to every game. Like, I mean, most guys that do stats and stuff like that, like us, we try to like watch games and analyze them when we're sitting at our house. But to like not like to be a president and not do scouting, not like actually
Yeah.
try to find people too often. Like, I'm sure. How often do you think Phil Jackson went college scouting?
Oh, they said he
I'm
never.
gonna say never.
They
Yeah,
said he
exactly.
never. Like, I remember all the important like pre-draft things, and like there was all these little quotes, and everybody was like, "Where the fuck is Phil?" There's like nobody representing the Knicks here at all. And like I heard, Joe, you know what's crazy is that I think like I remember somebody doing like a pre-draft interview talking about like the Knicks, and I wish I could remember off the top of my fucking head. I remember like hearing like Phil Jackson used to ask the craziest fucking questions. Like, I don't even remember what it was. Like, would you eat this? Like something like wild, like, just crazy Phil Jackson, Zen master, like out of the ordinary BS that nobody else would ask.
I know that's not really up your alley, but I would love to be a part of that. That's probably what I would do if I was in their place.
Oh man, Joe.
Just giving an interview like, hey, so you have 3 seconds to do something. Are you going to try to jump off this bridge and survive, or you're going to try to jump in front of this moving train? What do you do? And it's like, what?
Yeah.
You're like, anyway, so the triangle offense.
I mean, I can't wait for part 2 of this. Like, I know we spoke about Porzingis very little. He just said, like, he felt he had this immense talent that could change the team. Obviously that didn't work out, but there was so much more to that story. There was probably just as much to the Kristaps leaving the Knicks with Phil Jackson, that whole BS, than Melo.
Don't worry, we'll definitely do one of these involving Kristaps and his brothers and all their issues they had in New York. That's for sure.
Part 2 with Kobe Call and Phil Jackson is coming out. So, I mean, I want to dive in on the fucking Porzingis exit and how that worked out exactly.
I know it was before. It sucks that Phil Jackson wasn't here when Jeremy Linsanity was happening, because I would have loved to get his take on Linsanity and Melo just not meshing at all. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up for the conversation we've had today. We only went over part 1. We'll definitely go over part 2. Any parting words, Angela?
Can't wait.
I love it. Bart Scott.
Voice.
Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. We're about to be on Spotify, I think Stitcher, Apple, iTunes, all that stuff. Yeah. We're paying to get on, so we'll figure it out as soon as it happens.
We're going to be advertising that stuff very soon. It takes a little bit of a process to like the reviewing process, but Spotify's up. Yep. Like, comment, subscribe, thumbs up, YouTube channel, Big Nick Energy.
Let's go. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as well. This has been Joe Yoke with your BKE podcast, Phil Jackson edition. Angelo sitting up. Let's keep that back surgery going the right way, baby. Peace.